Hey everybody, let's get back to it here at the Red Barn. In this episode, we got the alternator sorted. We got some pedal assembly work to do. I got to remove the floor tar. I got some custom axles to take a look at. But let's start off with a kitty check-in. The boys are beating up on the girls, and the girls are making a break for it. And the boys are chasing the girls. So, in 1 week, they've gone from moving around a little bit to completely out of control. Look at this guy.
He's all puffed up.
He is out of his mind crazy. Look at Smash. Smash is just recreating.
He's all puffed up.
Oh, she's got the kickaroo.
She's perfecting the bunny kick.
Yep, there's the practice bunny kicking. It's the roustabouts. Arrgh. Get a punch. Oh, that was a little bit. Oh, roughhousing. Oh. It's a cat fight. Ow. Vesper's just saying, hey, I'm just trying to pee. Oh. Tail up kitties. Oh. This is also a new thing they do. They play, and when somebody plays too rough, the one that's being roughed up will make the noise that says that's too much. And this is how they learn how to play and what is too rough. That's why it's good to raise kitties with other kitties. So they learn that. And that's what you're seeing happening now. And Mom is just saying, enough of that. I just want to sit here and enjoy the view. I know I've shown you this 100 times, you know, shifter and a shifter. What's the big deal? Well, let me show you the big deal. So remember in the last episode, I was mentioning that one of the things I was going to have to do is relocate the alternator because the shift cables run right through where the alternator was. Well, I figured before I get all excited and pull the motor and see what's what, I figured I'd see if I could stuff the alternator in there. But look at what we're seeing here. The shift cables have enough space to run underneath the alternator bracket. Normally, you can see what they used to do. They wanted to, you know, sit up just a little bit higher than where they are now. But these things have a bit of flex to them, so I was able to get the alternator in there, and let me tell you what fun that was, because there's not a lot of room to get that in and out, and I had to get the mounting bracket in there with it. Long story short, it's in, and it shifts. So I do not have to relocate the alternator. And what's cool about that is the alternator belt, it also runs up to the factory water pump. So if I decide to run the factory water pump, I can use all factory Ferrari parts, factory belt, tensioner, all that other stuff, and it's done. And I know it works. I don't have to guess at anything. And I don't have to worry about belt alignment or any of the stuff that happens when you start fabricating your own stuff. And we built the headers so that they clear. So it's all factory parts down in there. And the cables, I did have to change. I had to readjust them a little bit. I had to give that one cable a little more. The 4-amp cable, I had to give it a little bit more length just to make sure. But thank God for the turnbuckle, right? Like if I hadn't had that turnbuckle, because I've got a bunch of extra adjustment in there now. And so I can go a little bit farther with that if I need to. But it looks like we have one major fabrication job we don't have to do. So I'm really glad I checked that before I pulled this whole drivetrain out and fabricated something that turns out wasn't necessary. So I'm calling that a good day's work. All right, time for the pedal assembly. So here is a factory pedal assembly in place, but I wanted to show you kind of what I'm up to here. Here's the plan of attack. I need better brakes than one master cylinder. I choose to have that, and I need a hydraulic clutch. Yeah, I could convert this, but it's, you know, 70s tech, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm a sucker for style points, and so instead of that, we're going to do the same thing we did in the LS car, and we're going to go with that. So this is a Tilton, as you can see, Tilton pedal assembly. It's got variable, meaning you can buy whatever size master cylinders are appropriate. Clutch master, and then 2 separate masters, front brakes, rear brake, and then a balance bar. So you can adjust your brake bias. And there's also a remote bias knob, should you so choose to have that. And then this pedal is just a pedal, right? The gas pedal is just a pedal. These are the stop adjustments here. But what I did in the LS car, you can see here there are various pickup points for connector rods. And so what I'll do is I'll take the throttle pedal position sensor off of the drive-by-wire setup and hook it up to a rod that I've done here, like I did in my LS car. And here's that same pedal assembly in the LS car. And you can see that there's a turnbuckle rod pushing on what is essentially an abbreviated lever from a Corvette throttle pedal. And then there's the drive-by-wire. You can't hardly see it with the bad lighting underneath the dash, but that's the drive-by-wire connector coming into that pedal assembly. And it works great because you know, it's all factory springs and all that good stuff. So it's got a really nice pedal feel with that turnbuckle. It's adjustable. It works great. So we're just going to go with the known, proven approach of the Tilton pedal assembly. And now some other stuff that we have to deal with. How do I figure out, like, where does this pedal need to go? And so I'll show you what I'm going to do. First, those of you that have worked on 914s will recognize the infamous floor tar. You can see this has got a layer of, literally, it's like roofing tar all over the floor of the car. That's got to come out because invariably, as you can see up there, even though this is a super dry chassis, any kind of moisture that gets under this stuff will cause surface rust at the very least and rot through at the very worst. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the heat gun out and I'm going to scrape all this tar out of here. Then what I'm going to do is I will put this back in place. Let me just show you the approach. This goes back in place. And what I'll do, this is what I did in the LS car and it worked fine. What I do is this. And I'm not going to do it now, obviously, because the tar is going to go away. But I'll mark, once everything's cleared out, I'll mark where that location is. And then when I fit the Tilton assembly, once I set everything up with the pedal angle that I like and all that good stuff, I'll come back and duplicate this position. So I know that the pedal location relative to where this is in space will be the same with the Tilton pedal assembly. And that just means that all the other ergonomic stuff in the car will work. The last thing I'll tell you about this process is that you can't really see it now. You can sort of see there's a low spot, there's this level, then it pops up to this level. Once I get this tar out of here, you'll see that there are stiffening ribs in the floor. And I can't just bolt that Tilton pedal assembly down because it's an uneven surface. So I have to make a new plate to basically give myself a completely level floor that I can bolt that to. So get the tar out of the way, remake the floor, those studs have to go. You know, everybody's got their own approach to different stuff. And knocking this tar out of here, I've seen razor blade knives being used. I've seen people that do dry ice. You know, I happen to like the good old heat gun and the putty knife. So I'm just going to do a quick section live so you can see what it takes, and then I'll time lapse it. I'll just start on a place right here in front of you, and you get an idea. And every car is different. Sometimes this stuff comes right out, and sometimes it doesn't. Now I'm starting in the middle of a spot. Usually starting at an edge is a little bit easier, but you can see once you get under it, it kind of comes right up. It just takes a little while, and some places are harder than others. So let the fun continue. So there is one section of floor tar removed, and if I just kind of pull it out of the way, You can see what I was talking about earlier. This level, a rib, different level, a rib, different level. You got these openings. This is actually a cap that is a, I don't know, quarter turn cap. There's a hole in the floor. The car has these for getting the spot welder up through, as I understand it, to be able to assemble the chassis. But we don't care about that. So I'll get the floor all cleaned up and then start working out how I want to get the pedal assembly in here. Oh, and yeah, just like I was saying, you can see moisture under here. And when they say that 914s rust from the inside out, this is what they're talking about. You know, really, really dry chassis. And yet, look at that surface rust beginning to form. You know? So, anyway, floor tar, gone. At least for the pedal assembly. All right, with all the tar out of the way, I went ahead and just plunked the factory pedal assembly back in there and did the marky mark thing. And now I have my Sharpie line. And then I realized, you know, duh, why don't I just measure from some fixed point on the chassis? So I went ahead and just captured the measurement from this floor cross member up to that line and documented it there. Now the other thing you're seeing is the up and down measurement. I just went ahead and captured sort of the middle of the pedal and the top of the pedal and captured those measurements here as well. So I can not just position this in space fore and aft, but that I get to play up and down. And you might think, well, what do you mean up and down? So on the tilt-in pedal assembly, what you can see is that the pedals have multiple mounting holes, which means you can move the pedal physically up and down on the lever and get the pedal positioned exactly where you want it. And if you take a really close look, look at the distance from this mounting hole to the edge of the pedal versus this mounting hole and the edge of the pedal. So this is in the low position. The pedal's moved down because I'm using the top hole. But if I wanted to move it down less than this, I could turn the pedal upside down and split the difference between this measurement and the measurement between here and here. So you can really fine tune where the pedals go, which is kind of cool. So in this position, it most closely approximates the factory pedal location in height. And now, when you get this in here, oh, the other thing I did, you can sort of see it from this location. I started playing with the actual position that I want these pedals to be in. So I adjusted the stop on the throttle pedal so it would be where I wanted it. And the nice thing about that is if I use my quick checker, you can see I can get it right to the line that I want it to. So now I know that's the position that I want things to be in. So as a next step to get the pedal assembly in here, I've got to make a plate, and I'm just working up a template now, and you can see where it's got to sit down in between those ribs. It's got to span the floor. I got a clearance for that plug, and I find it easier to piece things together, especially when there's a little bit of complicated shape. I can sneak other pieces onto it and tape them on, and then either work up a CAD drawing or just trace this out onto the material and freehand it. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to bring this back all the way around to here and take it across to that. Remember, you're pushing on the brakes and you're pushing on the clutch, and when you're pushing on the brakes, this has got to take quite a load. So this needs to be in here real good. So I'll seam weld a couple of places around the ribs. I'll do some plug welds onto the floor, and in that corner, I'll tip an edge down and tie it to the floor, and I'll probably tip an edge down just up by the master cylinder and tie it in there. Obviously fill that hole, tie it in around here. That corner will get filled in, and then I'll sink some captured nuts into that piece before I weld it in, so I can just use fasteners from the top, and the pedal assembly will go in. So that's all we're going to do for this episode on the pedal assembly. Mackenzie's Off-Road custom axles. Let's see. You gotta love it when something that's supposed to take all this torque and horsepower is labeled fragile. Anyway, let us see what we got. We have got our spec, I think, I'm gonna forget what I ordered probably, right? These are Mackenzie's versions of 108 millimeter 930 CV. And what they do is they work the star, this is called, so it can take more angle. And spec 1, if you want to, I guess this is spec 1, but it doesn't matter. This version is a little less expensive, and when you look at what these things are designed for, it's like off-road, high impact, you know, wheel off the ground, under power, slamming back down, huge shock loads. So with this application, the standard star is going to be just fine. So obviously 4 of those. These are the boot. These are the boot holders, if you want to call it that. These sit on the outside of the CV. And the boot, there's a little lip in there that the boot goes onto. And these boots are twice as many pleats, so more flexibility, more room, less apt to fail, different material than a factory street boot. So these are like essentially indestructible in this application. This is the super duper CV joint grease that they recommend. It's better than the regular old stuff that you would typically use. These are not painted. These are raw, and they don't recommend you powder coat these. Paint so that you can see if they flex, which they do. They will take a twist under load, but the paint will crack if there's an issue with the underlying material. So these are the custom length axles. But there we go. So I will get these assembled and get them fit in the car, and now we can really start making some progress. And quick tech session. These CVs, you'll see have a groove cut in them. The groove always goes towards the drive flange. And then if you can see this, if you look at the star, you can see that this end of the star's splines are just ended. But the side that the axle goes into has what are called starter splines. So you can see there's like a little step to help the axle get in there. So that's the axle side. Groove side of the body is the output flange side. And so the other thing that Mackenzie's does, they say they also take the time to pre-fit everything. So they don't send out a star that suddenly it's like, hey, I can't get my axles together. And here you can see, I mean, it just slides right on there. So it's really nice that this comes all set to go. So there you go. There's the tech stuff for the day. Which side of the CV goes which direction. Now you know. And then to wrap up for the axles, I just gave them a quick paint job. The boots obviously come well down into this area, and this is going to be completely slathered with grease, so no worries there. And I just got the boots set up on the, I don't know, the boot capture thing. And these are the factory Porsche end caps that go on the end of the axle and, you know, kind of serve as a grease trap. And then when you take the axle off, these stay attached to the CV and you're not dealing with grease everywhere. So it's kind of tidy. So I may give that a go. And I talked to Mackenzie's about using those, and they said, you know, fine, go ahead, as long as they don't, you know, crush. And they're not going to take up enough space to make any of the measurements be of a concern. All right, time to assemble an axle. And they're a little messy. I'm not the greatest. But there is one. Let me get this out of here. There is one custom axle that we can now go fit. I'm gonna go get this in the car and see how we did. Well, as it turns out, the Ferrari flange threads are different from the Porsche. It's a finer thread, and I don't have any fasteners long enough. But without cranking something down, I can at the very least just kind of stick this in here, horrible though it may be, and just hold that CV where it needs to go. And what you're seeing now is my horrible paint job. My horrible paint job is peeling already. But what you're seeing is this is full droop with no droop reduction. And we have got, you know, it's not thrashing the axle. So that is a ridiculously steep angle that I never want to see in real life. But it appears that it's just fine. All right, then I just blocked up the, took the shock off and blocked up the wheel. Now again, this isn't bolted on, but the litmus test is, does this axle move? And the answer is, it moves. We have custom axle. Notice I didn't pluralize that because we don't have custom axles. We got custom axle. But check it out. And you saw that thing in full droop, man. It is ridiculously long. And, right, that was at full droop with no droop limiters. So, shout out to Mackenzie's Off-Road. That was very cool. So now I just got to measure up and get some of the right size, right grade output flange fasteners. So there we go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Awesome. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. I really appreciate you guys watching. Please leave a comment, leave any questions, and I hope you're enjoying the kitties, and we'll talk to y'all again real soon. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.